Hey, this is just a quick note about our sponsor, Privado, the premier enterprise privacy platform, purpose-built to bridge the gap between privacy and engineering. Its privacy code scanning solution embeds privacy compliance and governance into the product development lifecycle and empowers privacy and security teams with unparalleled visibility of sensitive data flows and the insights to find and fix privacy vulnerabilities. You can leverage Privado's data flows, dynamic data mapping, privacy assessment automation, and real-time visibility of privacy issues. Enter the era of proactive privacy and transform privacy from business blocker to business enabler. To learn more, go to privado.ai. Hello, I am Deborah J. Farber. Welcome to the Shifting Privacy Left podcast, where we talk about embedding privacy by design and default into the engineering function to prevent privacy harms to humans and to prevent dystopia. Each week, we'll bring you unique discussions with global privacy technologists and innovators working at the bleeding edge of privacy research and emerging technologies, standards, business models, and ecosystems. This week, we welcome Lorrie Cranor, Professor of Computer Science and Engineering and Public Policy at Carnegie Mellon University, Director of CMU's Scilab Usable Privacy and Security Laboratory, and co-director of CMU's Privacy Engineering Master's Program. In this episode, Lorrie explains how the next generation of privacy experts and engineers can work together to bring new architectures, innovations, and software to market. She describes the kind of hands-on work in which her students participate, including a capstone project sponsored by Meta that's exploring ways the platform can integrate more privacy education into its UI and UX. In addition, she shares her perspective on the job market for privacy engineers for recent grads and explains how CMU's certificate program in privacy engineering aims to meet the high demands for experienced privacy experts with knowledge of privacy engineering concepts. We also get into Lorrie's research on cookie banners and privacy nutrition labels for IoT devices. Enjoy the episode. Today, I'm delighted to welcome my next guest, Lorrie Cranor, professor at Carnegie Mellon University and director of their Scilab Security and Privacy Institute. Welcome, Lorrie.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on. I've been looking forward to this interview with you for a while because I have so many questions about how you're seeing privacy engineering shaping up as a discipline, especially given that you educate the next generation of privacy engineers and are also seeing the market for hiring privacy engineers. I imagine at least that that's the case, that you're hearing from a lot of recruiters.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So first, I'd love to hear your origin story before we dive into kind of the work you're doing today. I know you've worn so many hats throughout your career as an engineer, researcher, a founder, and now a professor. Can you share a little about how you became interested in this field in the first place? And, why did you choose to focus on privacy engineering?
Sure. So I was in the 1990s working on my doctoral degree in engineering and public policy, and I was interested in internet policy issues. And I had attended the Computers, Freedom, and Privacy Conference, and there was all this stuff about privacy that was really interesting to me. And so I started kind of looking into privacy issues of the 1990s. And then after I graduated, I went to work for AT&T Labs doing research. And within a few weeks of arriving at AT&T Labs, one of my colleagues told me that the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, was going to start a standards effort on privacy. And he asked me if I would like to go to a meeting and check it out. And so I had no idea what this was about, but I went to the meeting in DC, and it was mostly lawyers and policy wonks. And here I was, a newly minted engineer, and everybody looked at me and the one other engineer in the room, and they said, "Can you build us this privacy standard?" And I didn't know better, so I said, "Sure." And I figured this would be a fun project to work on for a few months or something. I ended up spending the next 7 years working on P3P, the platform for privacy preferences. And I learned a lot more about privacy in the process. I had the pleasure of working with a lot of privacy lawyers and privacy law professors who helped educate me quite a bit about privacy. And in the process of working on this technical standard, I realized that it wasn't going to be sufficient to just have behind the scenes things working. We needed to have a user interface so that the end user could actually make choices and control their privacy settings. And I started looking into that and ended up on a project at AT&T to actually build a browser plugin for privacy. And then at some point, the telecom industry started going downhill, and I decided that it was no longer fun to be at an industry research lab at AT&T. And I started looking for academic positions, and I ended up at CMU. And there were a group of faculty there who were very interested in privacy research. And so I had the pleasure of working with colleagues on privacy research, and I said I'd like to teach a course on privacy, and they said, great. And I started teaching on privacy, and we were getting more and more interest from students and from companies who would reach out to us and say, do you have any privacy engineers we can hire? And so we decided to actually start an academic program and a whole master's program in privacy engineering. And this was 10 years ago at CMU. And we had to figure out what that meant, but it's really taken off, and here we are.
That's amazing. Obviously since I've been following privacy, data protection, and just even privacy technology and engineering as of late for over 17 years now. You've definitely been on the periphery of the work I've been doing, where I'm like, wow, what is she innovating on now? So I'm just so, kind of in awe about how you've helped the industry shift left kind of faster, or not faster, but before so many others have, right? Kind of talking about where does privacy and engineering meet. And I guess my next question for you is, what's that been like trying to define what is privacy engineering? If people ask you, okay, you've got a master's program, and we'll talk about the program itself later, but they asked you, what is privacy engineering? What does a privacy engineer actually do? How would you answer them today? And I guess to throw in there a little wrench, like, how is that different from 10 years ago?
So I think it actually isn't a lot different today and 10 years ago, because I think the answer is that there are a lot of different things that different privacy engineers do. And I don't think there's just one profile. When we started the program, we went to the companies that said we'd like to hire privacy engineers, and we said to them, well, exactly what do you think a privacy engineer is, and what skills should we be teaching them? And we got all sorts of different answers, and a lot of, well, we're not really sure, but hopefully they know a lot about privacy and they can talk to engineers.
Right.
Okay, well, that's a good starting point. So I think we see there are some privacy engineers who do a lot of software development, and they are building things, and they're very technical. There's some that are reading a lot of other people's code, and they're looking for privacy issues. There's some that are just kind of consultants on privacy issues, and teams within the company can reach out to them with their questions and to get help on things. There's some that are doing user interface work and usability for privacy. There's some that are working a lot with the lawyers in the company and trying to bring the technical expertise into what the lawyers are doing. There's some that are building privacy tools to deploy throughout the company. There's just so many different things that privacy engineers do.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello, loyal listeners. The Shifting Privacy Left podcast is seeking sponsors who want to help educate our growing community of privacy engineers. Position your brand in front of privacy engineers, architects, developers, researchers, and privacy tech buyers. Insert a 30 to 60-second ad like this one into every published episode of the podcast. This is dynamic content, after all. Feature your new product, an upcoming conference, a sponsored special deal, endless opportunities. Email sponsorship@shiftingprivacyleft.com for more information on our sponsorship package. Okay, let's get back to our engaging privacy conversation. And so, how would you describe the difference between, let's say, I myself have no engineering background, no formal training in engineering, but I follow the tech and I feel like I can talk tech really well. So I call myself a privacy technologist because I can do that, translating the requirements in all those different languages, lawyers speak, business process speak, engineering speak. I just am not doing applied engineering. And so, I don't know where, I don't know if it's a separate category or whatnot, but, how does someone like myself work with privacy engineers in an organization? Where are these different over touch points with other privacy expertise because it's a team. We got to move it forward from different aspects of the business. Do you have any perspective on that from within an organization, how different privacy experts or even different privacy engineers, how do they work together to bring to market new architectures, innovations, software?
Yeah. Well, I think privacy engineers really need to be very collaborative because there are a lot of different types of people and roles that they need to work with. And I think we train our students to know that they don't get law degrees, but they know enough about the law that they can talk to the lawyers, and they have enough of an understanding of privacy law that they understand that, and they can figure out where they're going to run into issues that they need to actually go call the lawyers and say, we're working on this. Here's the issue. Tell us what we need to know about legal compliance here. Right. So I think a lot of it is just kind of being familiar enough with what other people are doing related to privacy that you know when you need to reach out and connect with them and bring them on board for what you're trying to do.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's all about collaboration. And I guess each company is going to be different too and how they work. So it's just a matter of making sure you've got all the right expertise across the organization, I guess, at the table.
Yeah.
So I know CMU has had a privacy engineering program for years, and there's several different tracks, as I understand it, like a master's degree, maybe certificate program. And, what are those different tracks within the privacy engineering program where students can enroll? And then what do good candidates for admission look like?
Yeah. So we started out with a master's degree program, and that was a full-time in-person program in Pittsburgh, which students could do in either 1 year or in 16 months with a summer internship. And then we added a part-time option, which students can do remotely. We have a few students who are in that program right now. And the length of that program is somewhat variable. I think you could probably do it in as little as 2 years, but that's actually a lot of work. So I'm expecting it will take a little bit longer. And then we added last year our certificate program. And the certificate program is for working professionals, and they can do that program in 4 weekends. And that's also a remote program. We do Saturday and Sunday on the East Coast. It ends up being in the afternoon, West Coast, I guess, in the morning. But we actually have people all over the world. So we have people who are calling in from Europe and Asia. And for that program, you obviously are not going to learn nearly as much as you can an entire, master's program if you're just doing it in 4 weekends, but it gives them a good overview of the field. And so for our master's programs, we need people who have some technical background. ideally a degree in computer science or something related. But we've actually had a number of students who don't have that sort of degree. They might have, a communications or a political science degree or something, but have gotten a lot of on-the-job experience in technology and have taken a few like community college or online courses in programming. So we've had some of those in our master's program. For the certificate program, you do not need to have a computer science degree, but some familiarity with computer science and technology is helpful.
So that actually brings me to brings us to a great segue as to what do the students kind of work on while they're in the program. So whether it's the privacy engineering program or as part of CMU's SciLab, if you could highlight for us some examples of projects that students have worked on, that would be awesome. Just kind of want to understand, the type of work they're putting out.
Yeah. So our students take a number of courses which are project-based. And so they work in groups and they get to really, dive into a privacy-related project. And then they do capstone projects at the end of the program with an actual sponsoring company. So let me give you a few examples. So I teach a class on usable privacy and security. And I had a project team in my class that looked at the names for cookie categories that are widely used. And these cookie categories, a lot of them come from the consent management platforms like OneTrust. And so there are terms like functional cookies and performance cookies. And they wanted to see whether people actually understand what these mean and if they could come up with better terms that would be more intuitive to people. And so they generated a big list of alternative names for 4 different cookie types, and then did a study with crowd workers to see if they could improve upon the typical names for something people would understand better. And they were actually able to make some progress. And after the end of the semester, they told me that they were interested in working on this more. So actually this semester, they are doing an independent study project with me and continuing to work on this. And I'm hoping they're almost done. I'm hoping that they'll actually have some recommendations for what would be better ways of talking about cookie categories. So that's one example. For a capstone project, I have a team working with me right now, and their sponsor is Meta. And Meta told them that they were interested in how they can put more privacy education built into their platform. And, what form should it take? Where should it be? And so the students actually ended up creating a mock-up of a social media platform. They decided to kind of make up their own rather than using an existing one, and they came up with different places that you could put some very short privacy education that either informs, so they have some education about how ads are targeted on this hypothetical platform, or that gives you instructions. So they have information about if you want to control people seeing your location on this platform. What do you do to control it? And they came up with different places that could be on the platform. And then they did a study with crowd workers to see how easy it was for people to find the information, how much of it they actually understood. And so they're working on coming up with their recommendations right now.
That's pretty cool. So in that last example, was it more about like visual cues around each of these, like that's embedded in the design, or was it actually about notice, like where you're putting text?
Yeah, so it was actually both. So one issue is the location. So do you just put if you have information about ads, do you put a button in the corner of the ad to like learn more, or do you make something that looks like a story in the news feed that's about how ads are targeted, right? Or do you just make people go to the help page or the settings page to learn this information? But they also looked at, however it is, wherever you put it, then should the information be in the form of text or an infographic or a short video? So they've experimented with all of these things. And unfortunately, I don't know the answer yet because they're still analyzing the data.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. And so, how does the work of the privacy engineering program, do they work directly with the CMU SciLab? Are they separate initiatives? Do they overlap?
Yeah, so CMU SciLab, it's our Security Privacy Institute. It's a university-wide institute, and we're kind of an umbrella over all things security and privacy at CMU. So all of our security and privacy related programs fall under SciLab, but the students and faculty they have a home department. So the privacy engineering students are in the software and societal systems department, but they're also affiliated with SciLab.
So what would you recommend if you were talking to business leaders and they asked, what are the tenets of privacy engineering? What are you teaching your students today? And I know I'm not asking you right now to kind of go through your entire, coursework, but, if you had to sum it up, like, are you following kind of more NIST's kind of viewpoint on how they see privacy engineering? Do you have a different framework? What are the tenets or the aims of privacy engineering outcomes?
Yeah, so in our program, we want to give people a pretty broad view of privacy engineering and make them aware of different frameworks, but not say, we're teaching you the NIST framework and that's what you have to follow. Right. So we start their first semester, they get some background in security, some background in law, privacy policy. And every semester we have a seminar where we're bringing in guest speakers. And so they're getting, kind of whatever interesting things are going on. Right? And then in their second semester, they get my usable privacy and security course. So they get some of that usability work. So they understand how to do user studies, but actually more importantly, how to ask questions about usability and work with usability professionals. And then they have a course that we call Engineering Privacy and Software. And that is looking at software engineering approaches to privacy engineering. And I left out the first semester, they also have we call Foundations of Privacy, and that's our privacy algorithms course. That's where they're learning about differential privacy and things like that. Mm. And then they have optionally an internship, and then they do their capstone project. So those are kind of the areas that they also can take electives and choose what electives make sense to them. So, along the way, they hear about different frameworks. They hear about laws in different countries. They hear about different technology and algorithms and tools and things like that. But, we don't have a course on a specific framework or a specific tool, but these things keep coming up.
Very cool. So I know from you being connected to me on social media that you just won an award. Can you mention what that is? I know it was from CMU.
Yeah. I won our Distinguished Professor of Engineering Award.
That's so awesome. Congratulations. I think that's amazing. And I know you've been doing some great work there for years and years.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your own research in privacy. I know you've been working on cookie banners and privacy and security nutrition labels for IoT devices. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So on cookie banners, we've been looking at how to make them less terrible. I'm not sure it's even possible to make them good. Fundamentally, like even if they're beautiful, nobody wants to have to interact with them that often, right?
It's so true.
But we've definitely seen that they go from bad to worse. So we've been doing studies where we set up a fake e-commerce website and we recruit crowd workers to come to our website and we tell them, check out our new website, put something in your shopping cart, and then we're going to ask you some questions. And along the way, they, of course, encounter a cookie banner. And so we'll do the study where we'll have like 14 different versions of the cookie banner that they randomly get one of them. And what we're interested in is, what did they click on in the banner? How did they interact with it? Or did they scroll past it and not interact with it? And then after they've done that, we ask them questions about it. And we want to see, like, do they understand what they consented to at all? What do they understand about this? And so by doing this series of studies, we've actually gained a lot of insights about how people behave with respect to cookie banners and some things that could improve them. So that's one area. And then on the nutrition labels, so we've been working on nutrition labels here for over a decade. So I remember back in the 1990s, when the Federal Trade Commission first started looking at privacy policies, and privacy advocates told them, these things are too long and no one will read them. And there were actually people at the FTC who said, well, we should make them like nutrition labels, and then they'd be short and people could read them. And you had these government people who knew nothing about design who were just saying, make them like nutrition labels, but they didn't know what that meant. So we started looking at, okay, well, what would a privacy nutrition label look like for a website? And we did iterative studies with design and user testing and came up with some ideas. And then we looked at that for mobile apps. And we came up with some ideas and wrote some papers about it, but the app stores did nothing for years and years. And then a couple of years ago, both Apple and Google started actually implementing privacy nutrition labels in their app stores. And they didn't look anything like the ones that we had designed, but the idea was there. And so recently we've started testing those to see what users understand about them. And unfortunately, we found a ton of problems with them. And so we're doing more work to try to figure out how to make them better. We've also looked at nutrition labels for IoT devices, looking at both the privacy and the security of IoT devices. And we have a proposal for that. And again, we wrote the academic papers, but industry didn't do anything with it. But very recently, there's been a push starting at the White House to have these labels. And NIST has been looking at it. And my colleague actually went to the White House a few weeks ago. They had a summit, and they are looking at designing IoT security and privacy labels. And we've put our proposal out there as kind of, a starting point to look at.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? For instance, so I'm wondering, what were some of the problems with the nutrition labels to begin with? And then when applied to IoT devices, like, it's hard. There's only a small interface, if any, right? For most IoT, what is the proposed solution for being able to provide notice?
Yeah, so for the IoT devices, we're not looking at something on the device itself. This is for at the time of purchase. And
got it. Okay.
So it can be on the box, it can be on the website that you go to make the purchase. So that's basically, this addresses the problem of, I want to bring this thing into my home and I don't want it spying on me. I want to know whether my thermostat has a microphone in it, all that kind of stuff.
That makes sense. So that reminds me of the work being done at the Privacy and Security Lab at Consumer Reports, since they put out so much around, how can you understand one organization, one company's business practice versus another, and how do you do that? And so they come out with their consumer reports, with their testing and all of that, and they have their Privacy and Security Lab too to test for that. I'm just curious, are you working at all with other labs or other organizations outside CMU to test the market on some of these things? Is it, or how does the research more inform public policy directly, like CMU is, for instance, going to the White House to share the great research you've done?
Yeah, so both. We actually have been working with Consumer Reports. We've been talking with them about our IoT label for a couple of years now, and one of my students who's graduated is now working for them as a consultant on some of that work.
Great!
Yeah, and we've been partnering with them as we've been pushing our label design. We've been working with them on that, so that's exciting. We've recently also started working with some of the industry associations that are now involved with trying to come up with standards that meet the guidelines that NIST has been pushing out with the White House. So we're hoping to get more involved with some of these industry groups as well.
Excellent. And the more heads to put together, the more traction we can get in the market, the better I think it is for everyone. That's awesome. It's great to hear. So, anecdotally, I'm seeing as someone who just is passionate about privacy tech and privacy engineering, shifting left in organizations, privacy innovation. Recently, I've went ahead on LinkedIn and looked up, who's a privacy engineer I'm not connected to, because every now and then I want to expand my network and find people outside my network to, follow and learn from. And so recently, in planning to bring this podcast show to life, I knew I wanted to build, an audience that included privacy engineers. And so I did that. I started looking for people outside my network that would be either great speakers or great just to learn from and share their research through this podcast. And I was shocked to see that even in the past 3 to 4 months, there's been an explosion of the number of people who brand themselves as a privacy engineer in their LinkedIn headings, and I'm just curious if you are seeing any data to reflect this anecdotal experience of mine. What does the market look like for hiring for privacy engineers? What are you seeing in your unique position as a professor?
Yeah, so I also have mostly anecdotes here. I'm definitely seeing an increase in the number of companies that are reaching out to me and asking me to distribute job posts to my students. I think that used to happen, a couple of times a year, right? And now I feel like every week or two, I have a company reaching out to me. So that's definitely happening more and more. Although I must say, one of the things that I've also seen is that these companies say that they're looking for an experienced privacy engineer. And there still aren't a lot of actually experienced privacy engineers
Sure.
at this point. And so I say, well, I can send it to my students, and they're like, well, do they have work experience? Can't you send it to your alumni?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can send it to my alumni, but they're all happily employed right now. So maybe you might consider some of these fresh graduates who are well trained in privacy engineering, but they don't yet have work experience. I mean, some of them do. We do have some of our students who've come after working and they want, a career change to privacy engineering. So they do have some, but a lot of our privacy engineering students don't have much, if any, work experience. And I think that they do find roles and they're excellent at what they do. But there's some companies that are missing out on hiring them because they're insisting on people with work experience.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the effect of just taking so long to shift left, within organizations where the focus was on, for too long, the main focus has been on legal and GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, where I've worked myself, right, and in my own effort to shift left, and I don't want to say failing, but it just being too slow, or having to just over and over make the business case for, no, you need to set up like a privacy engineering team and a privacy by design program. And that was kind of like, met with a lot of dead stares, like, but why? I don't, our competitors aren't doing this, right? So, as if like, yeah, but there's laws, and like, how are you going to embed this into your business if you're not actually, embedding it into your business? And so now all of a sudden, when it's like, oh wait, Google's got hundreds of privacy engineers, and Meta's hiring privacy engineers now in droves, and large established companies like Intel and Microsoft, they've got privacy engineers. All of a sudden, some of these businesses have looked around, see the cookie apocalypse going on in Silicon Valley, and I think they're going, crap, we need some executive level engineer in here to kind of like set the work. And this is what my assumption is, right, based on kind of what I've seen working in companies. And now you're like, yeah, but where are you pulling them from, right? You've not wanted to hire for so long that now you're bringing in where is the seasoned privacy engineer that has all this great experience? I mean, there's only maybe like a few handfuls of people that I could identify that I'd recommend that have had years and years of deep privacy engineering experience. And they've figured it out as they've gone along, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it is a challenge for sure. And I wonder, what are your thoughts on how can we bridge that gap? Because there's greater and greater need in industry. And there are people I think who are really interested, right? I'd love to hear from you about, are you seeing a lot more applicants to the privacy engineering programs? But how do we meet that need, right? It's been a problem for security as well, and I think it's going to be even tougher for privacy engineering since it's even a little more niche.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we are seeing more applicants to our programs. And part of the reason that we introduced the certificate program was we heard from people who said, I really need some privacy engineering background, but I can't take a year and a half off from my job and move to Pittsburgh to get a master's degree. Can I get something quickly?
Yeah.
And so thus our certificate program. And I think there are some other programs like that other organizations are offering as well. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that pop up. I think people are going to, the IAPP and, attending their events and doing some of their certifications in the hope of getting some of that knowledge. My experience is that the IAPP is a lot better on, legal stuff and legal compliance, and not that deep on the privacy engineering aspect, but they're growing in that area. We also, I was involved in starting a conference called Pepper, Privacy Engineering Practice and Respect, which is a conference specifically for privacy engineers. That's not a research paper conference. It's all talks and panels about experience in privacy engineering. And that's also something that we've seen attracts both current privacy engineers, but also the up and coming who are let me go spend 2 days immersing myself in privacy engineering and learn something.
Yeah, I think that is really one of the few forums to bring all those who feel they are in the field of privacy engineering together. I can imagine that being really valuable to your students to be able to meet with the practitioners in the field and some of the people like yourself and Leah Kistner who are defining the space. So, that's it. I know that's a really valuable conference. And then I urge anybody listening to make sure they attend that this year. In fact, when is the next one? What month in 2023?
I don't know if they've set the date yet, but it will be sometime next summer.
Okay. So it's a good summer conference to plan for. It takes place in San Francisco, correct?
That's where we've been the past few years, and I think that's where it will be. But okay. I'm waiting to hear from Usenix exactly where and when we will be.
Excellent. And then I feel like it makes sense to say the sister conference, so to speak, is, oh gosh, what's the security one? Enigma. And I believe that just happened, right? The Enigma conference was recently happened, but it was really more around security.
Yeah, Enigma focuses on security. Yeah,
right.
And that's also a Usenix conference.
Indeed, and I know that one. I've been to that one, and I've also gained a lot of knowledge there, and surprisingly, a lot of privacy overlap. I mean, much more of a focus on security, but there's some usable privacy that is discussed there as well.
Yeah. In fact, I have spoken there about privacy. So yes.
Well, there you go. Also have a question about your students and what's driving them. Are there specific topics that, some of them have come to the program to really explore over others, or they're just, for instance, I know if you're in data science, a data science minded person who is really interested in privacy might want to dive deeply into differential privacy. So that as an example, that's more of a data science mindset, but are there some other areas where you're just seeing a lot of interest? Maybe it's a privacy enhancing technology, maybe it's a particular business, vertical.
Yeah, I think it's kind of all over the map. People come to our program with all sorts of different backgrounds and all sorts of different things they're interested in. I guess right now there's a trend towards interest in AI and machine learning. It's one of the hot topics right now. And so people are interested in the privacy and fairness issues related to AI and ML. So we definitely see some of that. We also see people who are very interested in personal privacy and privacy enhancing technologies. We have some kind of very civil liberties minded students. Then we have students who want to work for a big company, and they like the idea of working for a Google or a Meta, but they're somewhat uncomfortable with some of the way, those companies use data. And they're like, I want to be a part of the team that's helping them do the right thing on privacy. So all sorts of motivations.
That's pretty cool. And it's good to hear that it is kind of all over the board, I guess. I just wanted to understand the trends, but it is good that they're not just like all in on one area and then no love or attention given to some of the other important areas. And, I think that's also a great aspect of the program, is that it is bringing together so many different backgrounds, multi-stakeholders, so to speak. You get a lot of perspectives from different lives lived and expertise brought to the table. You mentioned a few companies, and I did as well. But are there any particular companies or categories of companies, like I don't know, Silicon Valley companies? It could be a category that are hiring privacy engineers. Are there other categories of companies that maybe should think about it but haven't really woken up to their need to be hiring people with this expertise?
Yeah, so I think the Silicon Valley companies have hired the largest fraction of our students, either directly or after a few years when they're ready to switch to a different company, they switch. And I think there's a significant fraction of our graduates who work for Google at this point. But we also are starting to see more students going into the financial industry. And then like everywhere else, like we've had students hired by the privacy engineering team at Nike, right? And at first you're like, why would a footwear company, right, be hiring privacy engineers? But besides, they have data, so they need privacy. They also have wearables and privacy issues, right? So there are all sorts of companies out there that have need for privacy engineers, and I think more and more they're recognizing that.
Yeah, and Nike, where I'm in the Portland area myself, and so Nike's based here, and I can tell you they also bought a metaverse company. So there's definitely a lot of data collected about individuals there. And yeah, absolutely, a great point. There's a lot of wearables, and I think we're going to see that across like retail. I think we're going to see a lot more wearables and need for, all of a sudden, retailers have not necessarily had the same need for privacy engineering or technologists, but all of a sudden, if they're thrusting themselves into the metaverse and, or not just advertising in it with their products, but actually creating a VR experience, or even AR, then they're going to need people who understand kind of the nuances here. So you're right. I mean, even your companies like Nike are actually much more data organizations than they first appear. That's pretty cool. So is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with? Any words of wisdom, or is there anything CMU is doing that you want to, plug, or any conferences coming up?
Well, let's see, we've covered a lot. And if anybody's thinking about a master's degree in privacy engineering or a certificate, check out our website, which is privacy.cs.cmu.edu.
Oh, that's right. I just saw on LinkedIn just before our call that you are doing a call for applicants, because the The applications are due, was it December?
December 12th for our full-time master's programs. The other programs, there are longer deadlines. But yeah, so we're in our final push right now to get students to apply for our full-time master's program. And we also, if you're interested in any of the research that I talked about, we have most of these publications on my lab website, that you can check out at cups.cs.cmu.edu.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you joining us today to educate us on, what's going on at CMU and all the great work you're doing in privacy engineering. And I want to thank the audience for joining us today. Until next Tuesday, everyone, we'll be back with interesting content and with another great guest. Thanks for joining us this week on Shifting Privacy Left. Make sure to visit our website, shiftingprivacyleft.com, where you can subscribe to updates so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found this episode valuable, go ahead and share it with a friend. And if you're an engineer who cares passionately about privacy, check out Privado, the developer-friendly privacy platform and sponsor of this show. To learn more, go to privado.ai. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode. Bye for now.